A twist of fate, a chance meeting beneath the silver glow of a city's restless night where two worlds collide in a heartbeat. Lila's worn hands clutched the frayed strap of her purse as she hurried down the rain-slicked sidewalk, the late evening chill crawling through her thin jacket. Her son, little Jamie, was asleep in the stroller beside her, pale and fragile beneath the threadbare blanket she'd managed to scrape together. The hospital bill still lay unpaid on her kitchen table, an insurmountable mountain of debt threatening to crush her hope. She had promised herself she'd find a way to save him, no matter the cost. The city buzzed around her, indifferent to the desperate prayers whispered in her heart. Just as she crossed the intersection, a sleek black car came to an abrupt halt beside her. The window rolled down with a smooth mechanical hum, revealing a pair of eyes sharp and searching beneath a dark, impeccably tailored suit. Behind those eyes, a man accustomed to control and command. His name was Ethan Gray, a tech billionaire whose fortune was rivaled only by his solitude. He noticed her immediately, the exhausted set of her shoulders, the haunted worry in her gaze. Something about her stopped him, a flicker of vulnerability, raw and unguarded, that no one in his world dared to show. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice calm but edged with concern. Lila startled, stepping back, unsure why a stranger would ask. "I'm fine," she said, forcing a smile that barely reached her eyes. But the truth was a fragile thing, slipping like sand through trembling fingers. The rain began to fall harder, and Ethan instinctively reached out. "Come inside, you shouldn't be out here alone." For a moment she hesitated, the weight of her pride wrestling with her need. Then, nodding slowly, she followed him into the glow of the nearby cafe. Inside, the warm light wrapped around them like a shield against the storm. Ethan ordered 2 coffees and listened as Lila's defenses gradually softened. She spoke in halting bursts about her son's illness, the impossible costs, and the sleepless nights filled with quiet prayers. Ethan's world, built on algorithms and acquisitions, had never prepared him for this. The raw edge of human struggle that no amount of money could erase. Yet in that small cafe, amid whispered hopes and tentative glances, something began to kindle, an unspoken understanding that fate had woven their paths together for a reason neither could yet grasp. As the night deepened and the rain eased to a gentle patter, two strangers sat side by side, one with the power to change everything, the other with a heart desperately clinging to hope. And between them, the fragile spark of something neither had expected, the first flutter of love. In the quiet spaces between words, shared silences become a language of their own, fragile trust taking root beneath the weight of unspoken fears and whispered dreams. Days turned into weeks, but the memory of that rainy night lingered like a gentle echo in both their minds. Ethan found himself thinking about Lila far more often than he expected. Her quiet strength, the way her eyes held both exhaustion and fierce determination. He was a man used to being in control, yet with her, everything felt unpredictable, yet profoundly real. Lila, too, noticed the change. Ethan's calls came at odd times, sometimes a simple, "How's Jamie?" or a, "Can I bring you dinner?" Her guarded heart wavered, opening cracks she had long sealed shut. She wasn't used to kindness without strings, especially not from someone like him. One chilly afternoon, Ethan visited her modest apartment unannounced. The scent of boiled rice and faint antiseptic filled the air, mingling with the soft hum of a lullaby playing from an old music box. Jamie lay asleep, his small chest rising and falling in rhythm with the fragile melody. Ethan crouched beside the crib, watching the boy with a tenderness that surprised even him. "He's strong," Ethan whispered, his voice barely more than a breath. Lila appeared in the doorway, her eyes wary but softened by the trust growing between them. "He has to be," she said, voice cracked but resolute. "I don't have any other choice." They shared a moment, no need for words, just two hearts tethered by hope and quiet understanding. Slowly, the distance between their worlds began to shrink. They started spending more time together, not as billionaire and stranger, but as two flawed souls seeking solace in each other's presence. Ethan helped with hospital visits, quietly paying bills in the background, careful not to overwhelm her. Lila taught him the rhythms of her life, the endless cycle of sleepless nights, the small victories when Jamie smiled or breathed easier. One evening as they sat on her threadbare couch, Ethan reached out and gently took her hand. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes. A promise that he was there, not just for Jamie, but for her too. The walls she'd built around herself began to crumble, revealing a woman both vulnerable and fiercely brave. And Ethan, who had lived a life of solitude and guarded success, discovered a new kind of richness, one measured not in millions, but in moments of shared laughter, tears, and quiet hope. Their connection wasn't loud or dramatic. It was woven in the soft fabric of everyday struggles and victories, in the stolen glances and unspoken reassurances. Slowly, imperceptibly, love blossomed, fragile but undeniable, a light growing brighter with each passing day. Beneath the calm surface, shadows stir, whispered truths and hidden scars threaten to unravel everything built on fragile hope. The air between Lila and Ethan had never felt so charged, so fragile. The trust they had painstakingly woven was about to be tested by secrets neither had dared to reveal, truths that lingered like ghosts in the quiet corners of their lives. It started with a letter slipped beneath Lila's door one rainy morning. The envelope was plain, but the handwriting was unmistakable. Elegant, precise, the kind of penmanship Ethan might use. Inside was a simple note. You don't know the whole story. Be careful who you trust. Her heart clenched, confusion swirling with a rising sense of dread. Was Ethan hiding something? She had glimpsed the polished world he inhabited, the luxury, the power, but now shadows crept through those golden halls. Later that day, when Ethan arrived for their usual hospital visit, she confronted him quietly, her voice trembling. Who sent this? Ethan's expression hardened for a moment, then softened with regret. I didn't send it, but there are things I've kept from you, things I thought would protect you. Lila's breath caught. What things? He hesitated, then began to unravel the story he'd buried deep beneath his fortune and success. A past marred by family betrayals, business battles fought in silence, and a secret that had haunted him for years. A truth about his father, a ruthless man whose empire was built on ruthless choices, some of which still rippled through Ethan's life. I wanted to shield you from this, Ethan said, eyes locked on hers. But the past isn't so easy to escape. Lila's mind raced. She had shared everything with him, her fears, her hopes, her son's fragile life. Yet here was a chasm of silence between them. The revelation shook her, not because of Ethan's past, but because it reminded her how alone she had always been. Could she trust someone with so many shadows? But Ethan wasn't finished. He confessed something more personal, more raw, the loneliness that had followed him despite his wealth, the walls he'd built around his heart to keep pain at bay. As their truths spilled into the quiet room, the fragile foundation of their relationship trembled. Yet amid the unease, something shifted. The honesty, raw and imperfect, was also a bridge. Painful, but real. They weren't perfect, and their lives were tangled with secrets. But maybe, just maybe, there was strength in facing those shadows together. Lila reached for Ethan's hand, her grip firm despite the storm swirling inside her. We can't move forward without the truth, she whispered. Ethan nodded, relief and fear mingling in his gaze. Then no more secrets. In that moment, beneath the weight of unveiled truths, a new chapter began, one where love would be tested by the very shadows they dared to reveal. When dreams collide and fears roar, love is put to the ultimate test. Will their hearts survive the storm or shatter under the pressure? The fragile thread that held Lila and Ethan together began to fray in the harsh light of reality. Their worlds, once quietly converging, now pulled fiercely in opposite directions. Jamie's health was worsening. The doctors were clear. Without an expensive, experimental treatment, his chances were slim. The cost was astronomical, even for Ethan's vast fortune. But the decision was complicated by more than money. It was about trust, control, and the unspoken wall still standing between them. Ethan wanted to take charge, to arrange everything immediately. Let me handle this, he insisted one afternoon, his voice firm but kind. Jamie's treatment will be covered. You don't have to worry. But Lila's pride and fear rose like a tidal wave. I don't want you to buy our lives, she said, voice tight. I need to make decisions for my son, not be swept aside like I'm powerless. The tension between them crackled like electricity. Ethan, used to commanding his world, struggled to understand her resistance. Lila, guarding the last piece of control she had, saw his offers as a threat to her independence and dignity. Their arguments grew sharper. Bitter words exchanged in the shadows of Jamie's tiny room, where hope was both a light and a weight. One evening, after a particularly painful fight, Ethan left, slamming the door behind him. Leela sank onto the floor, cradling Jamie, tears blurring the lines between desperation and love. The rift deepened. Friends and family began to notice the strain. Ethan's advisors warned him to pull back. Lila's weary heart wondered if she had made a mistake, trusting a man whose world was so different from hers. Yet despite the storm, neither could let go. The love that had sparked in quiet moments was now tangled in the very struggles they faced. Lila questioned everything, her fears, her hopes, even her ability to protect her son. Ethan wrestled with his need to help and his inability to bridge the gap between their worlds. The conflict wasn't just about money or decisions. It was about identity, trust, and the painful vulnerability that comes with loving someone who isn't like you. And as the days passed, the question loomed. Could love survive when faced with the harshest trials, or would the pressure break what had just begun to bloom? When shadows of doubt creep in, even the strongest hearts falter. Will fear silence love's fragile song, or give it new strength? Lila sat alone on the worn-out couch, the hospital bill crumpled in her hands like a weight dragging her down. Outside, the city hummed with life, oblivious to the storm raging inside her. Jamie's fragile breaths filled the quiet room, each one a reminder of the precious time slipping through her fingers. She stared at her phone, Ethan's name glowing on the screen, but the courage to answer escaped her. The fights, the misunderstandings, the chasm between their worlds, all threatened to pull them apart. She wondered if she was holding on to a dream that could never be, or her mind spiraled with questions. Was Ethan truly committed to standing by her side, or was he just a fleeting savior from a life too heavy to bear alone? Could a man of such wealth and privilege understand the depths of her fear, the rawness of her exhaustion? Meanwhile, Ethan paced his penthouse apartment, the city lights flickering like distant stars. He felt the ache of distance more acutely than ever. His success had taught him to solve problems, to conquer challenges with decisive action. But this was different. This wasn't a business deal or a boardroom battle. This was a fragile human connection, vulnerable and complex. He doubted himself. Was he enough for Lila and Jamie? Could his world, filled with luxury and expectations, ever truly blend with hers, marked by sacrifice and pain? Late that night, both reached for each other, but found only silence. Lila's tears fell freely, mingling with the whispered prayers for strength. Ethan stared at his phone, fingers trembling, words unsent. In their solitude, the moment of doubt stretched like a fragile bridge, one that could either collapse or hold firm. But love, even in its most uncertain hour, held a flicker of hope. When the night feels darkest, even the smallest light can guide two lost souls back to each other. Hope whispered on the wind, fragile but real. The morning after the longest night, Lila woke to the soft knock on her door. Her heart skipped, uncertainty twisting in her chest. When she opened it, there stood Ethan, his eyes tired but steady, holding a bouquet of wildflowers picked from a park he'd never cared to visit before. I was wrong, he said simply, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. I tried to fix everything with money and control, but I forgot what matters. Us. Lila studied him, the weight of her own pride and pain slowly melting in the warmth of his honesty. They sat together, the air between them softer, quieter, filled with the unspoken promise of new beginnings. Ethan listened as Lila spoke, not just of Jamie's illness, but of her fears, her dreams, and the exhaustion that came from fighting alone. In return, he shared his own vulnerabilities, the loneliness behind the fortune, the yearning for something real beyond the glittering facades. For the first time, they met not as millionaire and struggling mother, but as two people deeply imperfect yet willing to try. Ethan made no grand promises, only a steady presence, a hand to hold through the coming battles. And Lila, cautiously hopeful, allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, love could heal what money never could. Outside, the city awoke, bright and alive, mirroring the fragile light kindling inside them. A hope rekindled, fragile and fierce. Sometimes words are the quietest storms, promises whispered in the stillness that ripple through a lifetime, changing everything in their wake. The soft glow of twilight settled over the city as Ethan and Lila sat on the bench overlooking the river. The gentle lapping of water against the shore was the only sound as they sat side by side, their hands slowly finding each other's. Ethan's voice broke the silence, low and steady. Lila, I can't promise the world, but I can promise you this. I will stand by you and Jamie, no matter what comes. Lila's breath hitched, tears welling in her eyes. She'd heard many promises before, some broken, some whispered and forgotten, but this felt different. It wasn't about grandeur or wealth, but a vow of presence and partnership. I don't know what the future holds, she said softly, but I want to face it with you. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. Then let's make this official. Not just words between us, but a commitment. To trust, to fight together, to love even when it's hard. They sat there, letting the moment stretch, sealing their promise not with fanfare, but with the quiet certainty of hearts aligned. In that simple vow, a new chapter began, one where love wasn't just a spark, but a steady flame. Sometimes life's sweetest moments arrive unannounced, laughter spilling like sunlight after the rain, a new beginning blooming where least expected. It was an ordinary afternoon that turned extraordinary. Lila had taken Jamie to the park, hoping fresh air might ease the boys' restless nights. Ethan had insisted on coming along, wanting to be part of even the smallest moments in their lives. Jamie, fragile but curious, reached out to touch the petals of a bright daisy, his small fingers trembling with wonder. Lila watched, breath held, as a rare smile lit his face, a fleeting but precious glimpse of joy. Ethan pulled out a small kite from his jacket, something he'd bought on a whim. Let's see if we can catch the wind, he said, laughter threading through his words. As the kite soared, tumbling and spinning against the blue sky, Lila felt a swell of hope she hadn't known in months. Ethan's laughter mingled with hers, weaving a melody of lightness and love. For a moment, the weight of hospital bills, treatments, and uncertainty faded away. There was only this, the warmth of the sun, the sparkle in Jamie's eyes, and the unexpected joy blooming between them. It was a beginning neither had anticipated but both desperately needed. Proof that even in the darkest times, happiness could find a way. When storms gather and the road grows rough, love's true strength is revealed. Through patience stretched thin and hearts refusing to break. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of doctor's appointments, treatments, and endless waiting. Jamie's condition fluctuated unpredictably, swinging between fragile improvements and sudden setbacks. Each day tested Lila's resolve and Ethan's commitment in ways they hadn't imagined. The exhaustion was relentless. Lila barely slept, torn between caring for Jamie and keeping the household together. Ethan, though used to commanding boardrooms and billion-dollar deals, found himself powerless in the face of illness. But he refused to let despair take hold. Their quiet moments became rarer but more precious, stolen breaths in the chaos. Arguments flared occasionally, born from fear and frustration, but underneath them was a shared determination to fight for Jamie. Friends whispered about the pressures of such a relationship, the difficulty of bridging two worlds. But Ethan and Lila held on, drawing strength from each other when the nights were darkest. One night, as Jamie finally rested peacefully, Ethan wrapped his arms around Lila, whispering, "We're stronger than this. We'll get through it." She nodded, tears mingling with a tired smile. Love, they realized, wasn't just about happiness. It was about endurance, about showing up even when the future felt uncertain. Together, they faced the test of time, their bond tempered by trials but unbroken. Like dawn breaking after the longest night, new beginnings shimmer with hope, fragile yet fierce, inviting hearts to heal and step boldly into the unknown. The morning sun filtered softly through the curtains, casting a gentle glow over the small apartment that had become a sanctuary of survival and hope. For the first time in what felt like forever, Layla awoke without the heavy knot of dread pressing in her chest. Jamie nestled beside her, breathed steadily, peaceful and still. Outside, the world moved on, but inside, something profound had shifted. The endless cycle of fear, hospital visits, and uncertainty was giving way to something new. A chance to breathe, to heal, to dream again. Ethan stood by the window, watching the city come alive. The skyscrapers he had once seen as symbols of power now seemed like beacons of possibility, reflecting the change unfolding within him. He had learned that wealth couldn't buy peace, that true strength lay in vulnerability and love. He turned to Lila, who was gently stroking Jamie's hair, a soft smile touching her lips. "We made it through," he said quietly. She looked up, meeting his gaze with eyes that held both exhaustion and newfound strength. "We did, and it feels like the beginning of everything." Together, they began to rebuild, not just a life for Jamie, but a future for all three of them. Lila found work at a small community center, a place that welcomed her spirit and determination. Ethan started funding programs to help families like theirs, channeling his resources into healing and hope rather than endless ambition. Their days filled with small joys, morning coffees shared on the balcony, laughter echoing through the apartment, and the simple miracle of Jamie's growing health. There were still challenges ahead, shadows from the past that lingered, but now they faced them as a family, united, stronger, ready to write their own story. As the sun climbed higher, bathing the city in golden light, Lila and Ethan stood side by side, hands entwined, hearts open. This was more than survival. This was a new beginning, a chance to live, to love, and to dream beyond the darkness. When love demands its greatest cost, the heart must choose to hold on or to let go, to lose a part of itself so another may live. The sterile white walls of the hospital room felt colder than ever. Jamie's tiny hand rested in Lila's, his fragile breath shallow but steady. The doctors had given them an ultimatum. A risky procedure could save Jamie, but it would require a donor match, a sacrifice someone close would have to make. Ethan sat beside Lila, his face etched with worry and a quiet resolve. They had explored every option, every possible alternative. But the truth was stark and painful. One of them had to step forward. Lila's heart shattered at the thought, but she saw the same fear mirrored in Ethan's eyes. Neither wanted to lose the other, but the love they shared had become more than just their own. It was for Jamie, the small life hanging in the balance. In the hushed hours of the night, Ethan made his choice. "I'll do it," he said simply, voice breaking only slightly. "If I can save Jamie, it's worth everything." Lila shook her head, tears streaming freely. "No, I won't let you. We'll find another way." But Ethan's decision was firm, a testament to the depth of his love and the sacrifice he was willing to make. It was a choice born not of obligation, but of pure, selfless devotion. The procedure was dangerous, the risks high. Friends and doctors whispered prayers, hope mingled with fear. Through it all, Lila held Ethan's hand, her heart both breaking and swelling with gratitude. The price of love had never been clearer, and yet in that sacrifice their bond was sealed in a way words never could. When Ethan emerged from the surgery, bruised but alive, Lila wept with relief and awe. The path ahead remained uncertain, but one thing was undeniable. Love had demanded its greatest price, and they had paid it together. Like a symphony's last note, their story finds its peace, a melody woven from pain and hope, sacrifice and love, echoing forever in the heart. The afternoon sun cast a warm, golden glow through the open windows of their home, filling the rooms with light and life. Jamie laughed, a clear, joyful sound that had once seemed impossible. His small feet pattered across the wooden floor as Ethan and Lila watched, their hands intertwined, smiles soft and full of quiet triumph. The journey had been long and arduous, marked by fear, sacrifice, and moments when hope seemed just beyond reach. But now, in this serene moment, the threads of their story wove together into something whole and beautiful. Ethan had returned not only healed, but transformed. His wealth no longer defined him. Instead, it was the depth of his love and humility that shaped his every action. Lila, once a weary single mother burdened by despair, had blossomed into a woman fortified by courage and love's sustaining power. Together, they had built more than a family. They had created a sanctuary where vulnerability was strength and every hardship was met with unwavering devotion. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting long shadows that danced with the memories of their past, Ethan spoke softly. "We found each other in the darkest times, and now, this is our harmony." Lila nodded, her heart full. A love that survived everything. A story worth every tear and every smile. Outside, the city pulsed with endless possibilities, but inside their home, peace reigned. Their symphony, once tentative and fragile, now played strong and steady, a final harmony that promised forever.